All right, good evening, everyone. Good evening. Thank you all so much for being with us. My name is E.R. Anderson. I'm the Executive Director of Charis Circle. Charis Circle is a nonprofit programming arm of Charis Books, and Charis Books is the South's oldest independent feminist bookstore. We are holding many, many feelings tonight. I'm sure y'all are too. We are so fortunate to be in the great and historic place of the Auburn Avenue Research Library on African American culture and history. We are very, very honored to be here celebrating the work of Glory Edim, whose new book, Gather Me, a Memoir in Praise of the Books That Saved Me, honors the legacy and spirit of so many of the books which have informed Charis's values and actions over the last 50 years. We're here on a night which we hoped would be much less complicated of a celebration. We wanted to honor 50 years of Charis's feminist history by mirroring the history that Glory celebrates in her beautiful. But of course, we live in America, and we rarely get uncomplicated celebrations in America. Tuesday's election reminded us of what we already knew, that the work of liberation is always unfinished, and the cultural and political work of Black women, no matter how spectacular or impeccable, is rarely valued in its fullness at the time. Which is why it is all the more important to celebrate books like Glory's, which remind the reader of the centrality of Black women's cultural work in changing the lives of so many readers of all ages. Now is a time when it is even more important to protect and support our cultural institutions, which is why we are so thankful to our friends at the Auburn Avenue Research Library for all of their partnership through the years, and why we hope if you've not ever been to Charis Books that you'll come see us sometime soon. Maybe this Saturday when we're having one more party and sale. We know that books not only change lives, they really do save them. Tonight's event is co-sponsored by Jasmine Foster and her company Be Rooted, which was founded in 2020 to create a space for women of color to see themselves in the stationery they love. With a lineup of colorful journals, planners, and writing instruments designed by Black and brown designers, by 2021, Be Rooted became the first and only Black-owned stationery brand available at retail giant Target and Target.com. Jasmine's team has some really beautiful offerings for y'all in the lobby. I know many of you checked them out already. And we're going to do a drawing in between the completion of our reading and the Q&A. So if you have not yet followed him on Instagram, and you want to do that, you should do that so you can get entered into the drawing for the beautiful ones. So thank you, Jasmine and Be Rooted, for being here tonight. When I first thought about who I'd most like to have interview Glory Edim, Denene Millner was the first and only person who came to mind. I'm sure many of you are already familiar with Denene's work, even if you don't know it. Denene Millner is a 6-time New York Times bestselling author, Emmy Award-nominated TV show host, and award-winning journalist who has written 31 books. Among them, Taraji P. Henson's Around the Way Girl, the picture book Early Sunday Morning, and her debut novel, which we also celebrated in this space, One Blood. Millner is also the editorial director of Denene Millner Books, an award-winning imprint that has published 2 Caldecott Honor books, the Newbery Honor Book, the Kirkus Prize for Children's Literature, and a Southern Book Award. A McDowell Fellow, Millner has written essays for the New York Times, Glamour, and NPR, which hosted her critically acclaimed podcast, Speakeasy with Denene. Millner is a graduate of Hofstra University and a proud Atlanta resident. And now it's my honor to introduce the woman of the hour, Glory Edim. Edim is a literary tastemaker, entrepreneur, and advocate for diverse voices in literature. In 2015, she founded Well-Read Black Girl, an online platform and book club dedicated to celebrating the works of Black women authors and creating a supportive online community for readers. Under Edim's leadership, Well-Read Black Girl has grown into a nonprofit organization hosting events, book festivals, and author conversations that highlight the richness and diversity of Black literature. Her efforts have earned her accolades such as the 2017 Innovators Award from the Los Angeles Times Book Prizes and the Madam C.J. Walker Award from the Hurston Wright Foundation. As an author herself, Edim has contributed to the literary landscape with her best-selling anthologies, Well-Read Black Girl, Finding Our Stories, Discovering Ourselves, and On Girlhood, 15 Stories from the Well-Read Black Girl Library. So please give a warm Atlanta welcome to Denene Millner and Glory Edim.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out tonight to celebrate my friend Glory. I met Glory right before 2020. Yes, right before the pandemic. We were on the beach. Right, yes, see that. I had a picture of us that she posted on Instagram of us in our bathing suits, and it says Presidents of the But say that's not who I loved her. It loved us in literature and the beach. Absolutely, absolutely. And so here I'm so proud of you, so happy for you, and so grateful to you for always celebrating the written word and for always celebrating us. So welcome to Atlanta. Thank you. Let's get going. I'm so honored to be here. Thank you for coming out. Thank you to the Emergency a light, a support, and I'm losing my voice a little bit. It's been a long week, but I'm just so grateful for you. You are just a beacon, and you model how we can get a literary friend and how to have fun with it too. Sometimes it can seem really daunting and serious, but the beauty of sisterhood is it's fun, it's bright, it's vivid, it's being using that for me. So thank you, my Lord. We want to open by reading a passage from your book, and then I'll do some questions. We're anticipating having sort of a call and response with the audience. We want to include you in this conversation because that's what she does really, really well. And as the head of Well-Read Black Girl, and keeping us conversating about good written words. So we want to make sure that you participate with us. Yes, absolutely. So get your questions ready. And I wanted to start at the beginning. At the lowest points in my life, the most isolated and difficult times, when I was sad, when I was confused or frozen or drifting or desperate, I reached for a book. When I was joyful, successful, well-nourished, and content, I reached for a book. When the people I depended on disappeared or turned their backs, when I was handed what felt like too much to bear, when I was trying to do right by those I loved, when I was desperately looking to block out the raised voices in the room next to mine, or waiting for an answer that never came. When I needed a word to break the silence that surrounded me, I reached for a book. And when I moved to Brooklyn, ready to start my life fresh, to shake off some hard years and finally figure out who I really was, I reached for a book. Books have been my ladder, my stepping stones, my therapist, my teacher, my medicine, my parents, my religion, my lover, my fool, my instructional manual for life. Words, sentences, pages, and chapters have echoed my loneliness, reflected my joy, guided me to the shadowy corners of my heart and soul that needed to be coaxed into the light, giving me strength, helped me grow and change. Books taught me to bloom. Books gave me direction, my career, my community, my chosen family, my purpose. Come on, man. That's what they say here. Yes, they really are. Yes, they change your heart, your mind. They can lift you up when you need just like support and love. So, but first of all, we're just a couple of days past the election. How's your heart? It's heavy. It's really heavy. I've been thinking about, what the future looks like for my family, for my son. He's only 4 years old, and we live in Washington D.C. So we are in the thick of it. I before all of this happened and we had the results, I was walking in past the White House and telling him there's a possibility that Colin would be there. And my brothers and I, we both went to Auburn. We were on the campus thinking about what that would look like, what that would feel like. And so just to have that disappointment and the realization that so many people chose not to vote for whatever reason, they chose not to, and then we have the consequence of that. So I'm grieving and sitting with it, but I know I want to get to work too. But I'm just trying to process and think about what that work looks like.
You said something backstage that dovetailed directly into my first question for you, which was you said that you still refuse to let this steal your joy.
Oh yeah.
Right. And a running theme that I found in gathering was that no matter what was going on in your life, somehow that chapter would always end up with, I have to find the joy. And how was I going to give back to joy? Why is that so important to you?
I think it's essential to my makeup. Even when things are really difficult, I love to laugh. I love to poke fun at the difficult things. I also think that's just like an aspect of Black culture to be, like we find the humor in every single thing, and I've tried my best to, even when things felt like bleak and impossible, there's something always you can smile at, there's something beautiful in the world, there's something, you can poke fun at yourself. I try not to take the work too seriously. And it's allowed me to just see like possibilities and everything because I can laugh at myself, and I try to do that with my family, with as a mother, I try to do that. And I wanted folks to know that even though you can encounter, trauma with a capital T, that doesn't mean that like you can't find the joy and happiness in your life. You can overcome it. And it's like both and. I can be sad one day and I can still like watch something that makes me smile, or read something that makes me feel just like good inside, and trying to like really access that feeling at all times. I was like always looking for that.
Right. And you found that all of that in books.
Yeah.
Right. So what I really love about the way that you wrote Gathering is she tells her story. It's a memoir, and she tells her story, but then she offers how books in those moments where things are challenging or they're interesting or she's trying to sort something out, figure it out, how she could find those lessons in the books that she's engaging in. So where did you, first of all, let's talk about that device because it's brilliant. How did you decide to create your memoir and that?
Well, the book went through so many different iterations, and a through line of the book is just my mom's illness. And when I was trying to communicate with my mom, I originally wrote her letters. We would go back and forth and write letters to one another. And I found, I mean, they're such a beautiful keepsake of mine. And originally I was thinking of putting the letters in the book. So it was structured like, a mother and daughter writing letters back and forth. And I went all the way, through the editing process, thinking that that would be really what would be the final product. But then my mother found out. I had to get final approval from her. And at first she was like open and willing, and then she kind of pulled back. And she was like, "You're gonna use all the letters?" I was like, "Yeah, that's cute." It was such cute. And she was like, so first she was like, "Oh, take that one out, take that one out." And then suddenly she was like, "Take all of them out." And I was like, "Oh." So then I like completely changed the direction of my writing. And I'm actually very glad it did, because I was very codependent on it, to the point where I probably should have like co-authored it. It was like my mother and I. And so I was like leaning too heavily on them, and I went back to the drawing board. I talked to my editor about like how could we restructure this to still get that same feeling and get my interior dialogue that I was having with myself, especially with a young person, but not be so overly reliant on this book. And so I was looking at different books that I admired and things that different writing devices, and I was just like, oh, like books, like clearly every memory should tie to a book. And luckily, I have a lot of my journals from high school, from college. I have a lot of original books. Like I mentioned, the narrative of Fresh Benefits. I have like, the original one that I read in high school. It has like my handwriting and like just like all the notes in the margin. So I would think about a story or a memory, and then I would go to that journal or write to a photo, or I would kind of like just like sit with it and just try to like sync it up. And I also had a group chat with all my girlfriends from high school. They'd be like, "This is acting like this." Oh my goodness, yes. They were just, some of the things they were like, "Wait, well, I can remember it this way, and you said it that way." But they were definitely my checks and balances, because they would come back with like even more pictures or a memory that I completely forgotten about. So it was like I was doing an investigation of myself of sorts, like really trying to think about what my younger self was feeling, the experiences that, again, like all of it was challenging. There are a lot of things that are hard in this book, but I didn't see it as hard at the time. Yeah. I really just saw it as my life and something I was experiencing. And I thought, for lack of better words, I just thought it was normal. Yeah. I really just thought that this is something that I have to take care of. Like, I'm the eldest daughter, I take care of my brothers. My mom's not feeling well, I step in, like, so all of these things, I really didn't have a lot of time for reflection until I was writing this. Right. And I was like, oh, like at that time, I was reading this book, or even the connection I had with Maya Angelou, or reading, Little Women, like all these books that felt like just part of my story. I started to really like dig in further and see like how to shoot the book. So that editorial shift made a huge difference, and that's why I have the book in this form these days. Yeah, they saw me.
Well, that was another question that I had. Like when you write a memoir, it's not just your story you're telling the stories of other people who are engaging with you in all of those different moments that you're recounting in the book. Yeah. How did your brothers respond, and how did your mom respond?
Yeah. Like it was like kind of, all my siblings were very supportive. I interviewed them all since my dad has passed. I interviewed his friends, and that was a lot of fun. Like there was so much. There was a lot of information I got from his friends that I ended up just like keeping for our being in the archives and make it into the book. It just was so much fun to learn about their younger selves, and how he got his nickname, or when he first moved to the US. Like one of my moms told me a great story about how he worked at Denny's, and he was like one of the best cooks in the back. And I was like, I can't even imagine. Like I'm not scared. Yeah, I was like, really? She just was. It was just like it was a lot of fun collecting that information. Just like learning about my parents in a different way. And everyone was very open and supportive. I think the resistance I got from my mom was more or less, she's just a private person. Her temperament isn't to like share and tell all these things, especially really difficult things that we encountered. So she gave me her blessing and she gave me her consent, but like at the end of the day, she's like, I don't want anyone to ask me questions. Like, you're going to be on the floor, and I understand you have to talk about it, but I don't personally want to be like encounter that one-on-one. And I respect that. That's like a firm boundary, and I'm doing my best to, because people do want to talk to her, they want to give her flowers. They're so excited, and she's just like, it's okay, So I'm. It's been a process just trying to navigate it all, and I'm just really glad that I have this archive and I was able to write into the things I didn't know, and I tried to express that even when I was like lacking information or just like a feeling. I tried to do my best to write into that feeling and just be as vulnerable as possible.
Well, it showed on the film. You're so sure. One of the things I really loved was your exploration of parenting from the perspective of being parented to the perspective of being a parent to her brother. She was very instrumental for the chief caretaker of her two brothers, Maurice and Toni. And then you as a mom to your own child, and how you dug into different texts to understand sort of the nuance of parenting. And then you get older and you reread the text and you're like, oh, I didn't necessarily get that right. There's a different level to this, which I wrote somewhere in the margins. That's art. Yes. Because you engage with art in one way and you can go back and look at it and it can be saying something completely different to you. Can you talk about your engagement with the work as it related to what you come to learn about your parents while you were being parented, and then when you were old enough to look at those texts differently and your parents?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so much of it was just like my evolution of self and learning how to be first more self-compassionate and then extending that to my family and my mother in particular. I felt like when she was encountering things, I didn't understand the gravity of it, and I just wanted her to be my mom. Like when you're a young person and you have the desire of just like feeling connected and loved by your parent, and they're not able to give you the love that you desire. And it's not because they don't want to, it's unintentional. It's because, in her case, like she just was at capacity. There were so many things that led her to, experience her depression and feel that she was overwhelmed all of the time. And I didn't see that. I knew that I had to step in and support my family, but I also just wanted my mom. And now that I'm a mother, I'm able to step back and see just like how challenging it is to have the weight of parenthood. I was trying to like be, a good example and get them to school and, do all the things that mothers do. And then also still keep yourself. I realized that my mom lost so much of her identity in motherhood and also coming to the United States. Like I'm first generation, both my parents immigrated here in the 80s, and she was by herself. Like I completely, with the exception of my father, like she didn't have an extended family here. She did not really understand the culture. And it was just, I just never really thought about all she experienced as a young person and all that she sacrificed to, create a home for my brothers and I. So I went back to this page just more open and more compassionate and just more loving. Like I wanted her to know that I respect her for everything she did for my brothers and I have so much more understanding and more patience too. That like anything she wants in this life, that I know that we're going to provide that for her, because there's a debt that can never be repaid. Like the love that she has for us is undeniable and unconditional, and our relationship is complicated, but it was all worth it. And I think she is very proud of this book, even though she's a little resistant to come, into the spotlight. I know she's proud of me, and this is like a really old episode of Oprah that I'm gonna reference. So I remember watching this episode of Oprah where she was talking about like parents, and she's like, sometimes you have like all this love and it's like a gallon, it's like a huge cup, and perhaps like your parent or your caregiver can't like fill that cup, but their capacity is just a little pint, And I know that like sometimes my mom says a pint, but she's pouring in, and I'm like, give me more. Like but that's, it's just, you have to understand what people's capacities are. And that's like the biggest takeaway I have writing this. It's just like, I just understand so much more of what she was going through. And I love her. I love her so much for just being there and being allowing us to like witness her in all of her like different forms and different seasons. Like it's made me a more conscious parent. It's made me understand that kids really show, at least I think my son does, like just really learn by observation and modeling. So anything that I do, he's like imitating me and trying to follow suit. And I did that with my mom. Like I was always like looking towards her to see like how to be and how to show up. And when she wasn't able to, provide me with those examples, that's when I turned to books. And it's like, I want to read closely and read in between the lines so I can see how to be a person in the world,
I love, there was a piece about the way that you ended a chapter when your grandmother passes away. And she goes to Nigeria, and I don't want to tell you all the book, but I thought that this was really, really beautiful when you go to Nigeria to handle business, and then you come back, and she's not talking still, and then she just stops you from all of your like this buzzing about of all these things that happened in Nigeria that made you so happy and that were interesting. She says, "Did you find my mother? Did you talk to my mom?" And so even she was still,
oh gosh,
she's still,
like we all meet our mothers.
meet our mothers, and that just I just sat there and I was like, "Ooh,
I mean that was such a real moment, because it was like crystal clear. Like even with her, that being able to talk and communicate, the moment like you wanted her mother, it was. And this book is so emotional for me because I feel like, once you guys read it, like it really is my life. Like I have to, it's like everything that happened. And I have a lot of closure and peace around it. But like just remembering it is so very there.
Well, that's beautiful. Thank you. And it really touched me. And it'll touch you. But I'm gonna make you stop crying and maybe get a little angry. I was most interested in the way that you looked at love. Oh yes, as a young woman trying to figure out how to be in relationship with someone that you thought that you loved and that you wanted to love you back. And the way that she writes about it is she uses the text of Shakespeare and jazz, and in part all about love. To look for clues for how she should like engage with this dude, and tell them.
So it's so interesting. So I had a habit of like when I really liked a boy, I would give him a book. And there were plenty of times where I gifted the book Jazz to young men, and one of my girlfriends stopped me in my tracks. She's like, "This book is about murder." She was like, "Stop." She's like, "It's on the first page." I was like, "Wait till you get to the end." And it's so good, it's so beautiful. And she was like, "Stop, like, what are you doing?" And so there's times when you can like read text and you're so fixated on one passage or one quote or like concept or something, but you're not doing the close reading, and you're just like you're misinterpreting everything. You're like losing the point, the plot, all the things because you're fixated on this one idea. And I did that so much. I did that with Jazz for sure. I reread it, and so I do understand it's not necessarily a straightforward love story. And of course, with Romeo and Juliet, that's canon. Everyone reads William Shakespeare in high school. I was talking in particular about the movie because I was obsessed with like Leonardo DiCaprio. What is it like? Dress like them. I mean, that's what the theater kid in me. But even with that, like I was still so obsessed with the fact that they were like they committed suicide. I was like, that meant something. And it was just like for me, it was like this idea of full body sacrifice and full just like literally like to the death. Like this is love at the extreme of it. And I had to unlearn that, and I had to like find ways as an adult to come up to the page and say, no, it doesn't have to be like dying for love. That doesn't mean like you don't have to like throw yourself away, and you don't understand how many bad movies I watched because some boy likes it, and I'm like sitting here watching this documentary that I have no interest in, or I kept shape shifting, and it wasn't until I read Bell Hooks and really sat with all about love and thought about love as a practice and as a love ethic and something that requires you to show up for yourself and be true to yourself. And I really always had to go back to it because that was salvation. Because it's like reminding myself, okay, how I show up in a romantic relationship should also emulate how I show up for my family and for my sister friends and how I like show up in my community where it's like whether I'm like supporting a mutual aid or voting or whatever the case, that love is like a universal love. There's like a through line through all those things, and one is never more powerful than the other, and finding the balance in that. And it took me a long time to feel, it took me a long time.
It takes all of us.
Yeah.
Some of us are not there.
Really, right. It's like a lot of things feel one way in theory, especially when you're reading them. You're just like it feels like you're like, wow, like I understand this intellectually, but how do I put this into practice? And how do I make it something that when I do encounter conflict or disappointment, I can return back to like this value and it keeps showing up in my life consistently. And so that is the space I'm in now. I'm also single, so I'm just trying my best to remind myself of that and come back to Bell Hooks and other writers that I love, that, their love is visible on the page and it allows me to feel more vibrant and brighter in the love that I also to other people.
Right. That is so beautiful to me, what you wrote about my and what you found in her text, and how it made you relate to love in a different kind of way.
Yeah.
Just so this book is so beautiful.
Oh my gosh.
It's gonna make you pick up all of these other texts and revisit them or read them for the first time and find something really beautiful that you can relate to. What I love about what you're showing in this book is that you don't just read something once and then you think that you've gotten everything that you needed out of it and you put it down and you're like moving on to the next one. It's helpful to go back and engage and re-engage again.
Yes.
And so it gets through your thick skull.
Right. And sometimes it's not like maybe it's a particular chapter or passage or quote and just like sitting with that. It's like when you have like your favorite like Mary J. Blige song, It's like when I listen to my life, like I would do that for millions of times a day when when I found out the results, I put on a Marvin Gaye song and I read a quote from Toni Morrison and it made me feel calm and grounded. And I feel like books can do that. And for me, it feels like the easiest thing to access. And it's like, it sits in my imagination in a different way. So I just love that. I encourage people to reread things, especially at different seasons of your life. There's an incredible writer, she wrote the book Red Report, Alana. She told me recently she reads Sula once a year. And I was like, what? She was joking. She's like, no, I read it like once a year. And I'm like, I aspire. I have not done that. I don't have like a book that I would come to like once a year. Right. Like that's such a beautiful thing. And then as you grow, your perspective changes. You feel like you're growing with the book, And I really can't wait to reread Thomas and Coats with my son. I can't wait to sit with him and read James Baldwin or all the things that I loved as a young person or I was introduced to. He's the geek, stop. It's like I encountered in college, but I really can't wait to see him process that information and what ideas I'm gonna blossom for them.
How are you teaching him?
Right now some pictures. We do so many in our house. We have a photo of Frederick Douglass, and we have photos of my family and just historical people. And so because we have this photo of Frederick Douglass on our wall, I think he thinks it's like a relative. And so we went to we went to the National Portrait Gallery in DC. I'm very fortunate. I go to museums all the time. They're free and accessible, so we're constantly at the Portrait Gallery and all these museums, literally every weekend. It's so beautiful. They have this incredible exhibit of Frederick Douglass stuff. It was multimedia, and he immediately recognized Frederick Douglass, and he was like, Uncle Douglas, like, you know, so like right now I'm doing that pictures. I'm like, okay, now I gotta put like Marcus Garvey on one. And you're like, nice. And we have like a huge, photo of like the Obama's on our frame, just like a calendar code, and it's been up there. So it's our team who likes to say left office. It's like, I think like Sasha's like 8 in the photo, And so like but he recognizes things immediately. And they have the great fortune of Michelle Obama sent a video message during the virtual festival and she like said my name and something. So yeah, it's like if you like dig down in my Instagram. This is like my thing to play. I'm like, I'm gonna watch this forever. It's like my favorite thing. And I can show that to him. And I just look through videos and photos and all these things. And just like these are important people that we cherish and we study and they're part of Black history. But you have like ties to them too. And I hope that like he will continuously understand that. I'm going to approach it. It's so sad. And again, because I live in DC, we visit Howard, we walk there. I want him to feel like it's second nature and just like this is who he is, just like experiencing that full body.
I'm excited for a little Black boy to engage and fall in love with books because, like the running narrative is that, men and boys don't read.
Yeah.
They're not interested in reading. Then the counter narrative that give them something that they can be interested in, and then they will read it.
Absolutely.
And so, I'm excited to see where your son goes with books. The knee of a mama who.
Listen, I'm ready. I'm very, very excited to experience that. And I also have just so much admiration for like the mothers. And I think of Toni Morrison and her two sons. I think of Paul Marshall. When I was doing one of my books, I had to write permission to get access to some of her work. And as I was writing the check goes to her son, I was like, that's what I'm talking about.
That's right.
It's just like giving people this permission that's gone directly to the family. I love that. And it was like it makes me even think like, I say one day my son will, be overseas. I'm not willing and like, it's all tied together because that's the family and legacy when I come over the history, we're thinking about our stories, and most importantly, I hope it emboldens him to tell his own.
Yeah.
Whatever he experiences in life, he'll feel free enough to write it down and share it. And that the idea of storytelling comes in early.
Well, that's not something that comes natural for students when they're kind of tied to like this canon that ignores the hell out of them, right?
Yes.
That was a theme in your book as well.
Yes, absolutely. I had experience in high school. I was taking like an AP English class, and I had this really phenomenal teacher. I would give him credit for exposing me to so much unique literature. There wasn't enough Black literature in my opinion, but like he did have a sense of the world, and he challenged us to like speak up and share our ideas. And the moment we read Maya Angelou as a class, he said something that like just struck me as dismissive. And prior to taking this class, I had been really excited to read it with him and just talk openly in class. We had a very innovative classroom structure where we were all able to like lead discussions. And so I was so excited to talk about Maya Angelou. And so when he said that thing, I was just like, it didn't sit well with me. And I just had like a limited vocabulary at the time. I didn't know how to say like, you were rude. Like this is disrespectful to Maya Angelou. So I said some things, but I wasn't articulating exactly how I felt. And he pushed me. He was like, okay, look, you're right. Like I said something, but I need you to come back. Like, tell me more, tell me why. Like he really wanted to debate with me and be in like this very short dialogue. And I appreciated it because at the time I didn't have too many adults like encouraging me to do that. It was more of my household. It was really like, be quiet, like be obedient, do your homework, wash the dishes, like do like I don't know back to talk, So having the teacher say, if you disagree with me, like fight back. Like tell me why. And it was a really great invitation, especially as someone that was like, very curious and eager to be in that kind of like tussle going back and forth. It taught me a valuable lesson of speaking up for myself. And now when I think about everything that's going on with banned books and like, the situation at hand, it's like more and more people need that encouragement and that space to be to be loud and sometimes wrong or even right, whatever the case may be. They need space to articulate these ideas and push back and develop their agency in a safe space. And he created that safe space for me.
Talk to me about the safe space of community and what you created with Well, We're Black Girl.
Yes, yes.
And, give sort of primer on how you created
space. With Well, We're Black Girl, initially it was just intentional, like it was unintentional the way that I just wanted to come together and talk about books. There was no aspirations to start a nonprofit or have a festival or do all these things that have been really catapulted the organization to another space and realm and hold so much respect and weight and just like in the literary field. I'm so honored by it, but I really just wanted to make some friends. Like I really wanted to be in a book club and be close to other women and talk about writing and talk about all our favorite authors. And that enthusiasm and intention led to all of this. And so when people ask me like how did you do it? How did you build your business? And I was like, I wasn't trying to build a business or organization. I truly was trying to build community and have fun, have a space that we could reflect our stories to one another and feel safe. I think when you enter a space with that kind of just vulnerability and like longing to be connected to someone, and you recognize what it feels like to maybe feel lonely or feel like a misfit, like you're like open and eager to make a good friend. And so just like one wonderful person can change like your life, can change how you feel about yourself. And I've been very lucky to just encounter so many beautiful people, you included, that just have been said yes to my invitation and changed my life. And I'm the first author I will always give her credit and so much love is Naomi Jackson. And we are now very close friends and our kids are the same age, and she's working on more books, but her very, very first book was called The Star Side of Bird Hill. And it was about a Caribbean family, and the mother in the book was experiencing severe depression. And the way like my eyes got so wide, and I was just like, and the writing was absolutely stunning. It was just like beautiful, but that like plot, like I connected directly with it because I had never read something like that. Like about a young girl really taking care of her siblings and like trying to make sure that her mother was okay. And I just saw myself.
You saw yourself.
Yes, immediately in her story. And so when I met her at the Greenlight Bookstore in Brooklyn, it was just like, me and my Instagram and inviting her, like, will you come to my book club? I didn't have like more than like 50 followers, there was nothing that was like very extraordinary about the group at the time, but she said yes. And, we sat in a circle, we had this beautiful conversation, we immediately connected, and that like one yes is what propels everything. So I tell people to, go after that dream, invite people to talk. If people say no, or it doesn't happen the way you want it to, don't give up on that, like just continue, because it all takes is one yes. And do things with a sincere intention of just like trying to make sure people are heard and seen. I think that continues to be just like the hallmark of my life. I try to be as present and positive as possible, not toxic. I am the realist. I'm very, very bad at too, but I just really want people to know that like this changed my life, and there's a possibility that it can change yours too. Please allow it to,
She not amazing. Okay, so with her, I'm gonna do one more thing, and then we're gonna open it up for questions.
Yes.
You always end your podcast. Y'all listen to her podcast? Right, please listen, because she interviews some really amazing women, writers, and she always ends the interview with rapid fire questions.
Yes.
So I want to just throw a couple at you. Let's see. Okay, let's see. All right. Fiction or non-fiction?
Nonfiction.
Hardcover, paperback.
Hardcover.
Favorite place to read?
Oh, I'm a public reader. I like to be like on the ocean, on the bus or on the subway.
Okay. Highlighter, pen, or dog-eared pages?
Okay, this is like controversial. I do dog-eared my pages, and I do write. I don't like pictures.
It's pen and dog-ears. Okay. First thing in the morning or at night before bed?
and never heard of it.
In silence or with background noise?
Background noise.
Favorite book as a kid?
Oh, that's hard. Like at what age?
What's the first book that you remember engaging with as a kid?
Very serious.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then what's your favorite book right now?
Oh, okay. This is hard. But I've been loving Edward Dating Kenneth's new book, We're Alone.
Okay.
Oh my gosh. It's like she's so cheese. She needs like to win all the prizes, the Nobel, the Pulitzer. Like I just love her so much. Yeah, so I've been crying in her book on the subway.
I love it. But I'd like to open up for questions. You want to take the microphone?
Really quick, could you repeat the book you said for crying?
Oh, it's called We're Alone, and it's by Edward Dating Kenneth.
We, you know, my voice is more here because the mics.
Hi, Glory. Hi, Hi, my name's Katie. I'm a writer and bookseller here in Atlanta. Hi, Good. How are you? Good to see you. Nice to get to Atlanta. I was curious to know how your relationship with literature has changed from being a reader and now a memoirs.
Yes, it has been. Oh man, it feels like more responsibility. And I think with like reading, there's something that feels like lighter and it's, I don't want to say more fun, but it's just like less daunting. Like writing this memoir was very challenging. I had to like reach down to like the darkest parts of my memory. And I mean, I was just like crying up here. Like it was like really hard to revisit some of these memories, even though I've done the therapy, I've like gone through all the healing, but like things still can resurface and like touch your heart in a way. So it was hard to access those moments at times, but I had a really wonderful support system. My family was there, they were really nurturing as I was like, completing this project. And I think with reading, you can like step out in and out in a different way, and it allows you to just like have beautiful conversations and opens you up in a different way. Where really trying to write down your story as and it's really trying to be as true and authentic as possible requires some like deep excavating and like opening up and like breaking through. So I'm really glad I did it. Will I do it again? No.
We're not taking that answer.
Really loud. Hello.
Hi.
No, you're great. Okay. Hi, my name is Bridget. These they them pronouns. I just want. Ooh, I'm already gonna start crying.
Come on, Bridget.
Wow, vulnerability. My family's from Ghana. So I'm a first generation US born queer person, which I'm sure you can imagine comes with a variety of things. And I'm curious to hear how that, I guess, for a shared identity shows up in your ethos and your love ethic, because it's very rare for me to feel seen.
Yeah.
You're amazing. And you love books like I do. Oh my gosh. So yeah, I'm curious to hear how that shows up in the way that you move and the way that you're raising your little kiddo. Because I know for me it's been even more salient in the more I've grown up, because when I was a kid it was very unacceptable to be the weirdo that was trying to be, but we have that conversation right now. And you're not questioning all of that.
That makes sense.
What is here?
I'm just gonna hold space for you, so thank you for coming up and sharing your question and sharing just like your beauty. So thank you for being here. I feel all of that because duality is a heavy thing, especially when there's so much expectation from your loved ones and your parents, and you're struggling to become your own person and build your identity in a space that, to be quite honest, they're unfamiliar with.
So that was challenging for me. There are a lot of times where the things that my parents introduced me to or the ideas that they had were more appropriate if we had lived back home, if we were in Nigeria, and they didn't translate the same way in the United States. And if I wanted to be my fullest self, I had to push back. I had to say that, like, I disagree with this, and they might have felt it was, quote unquote disrespectful, but it was a new reality, and we've come, as an adult now, it's a different understanding. We have a different relationship. But as a young person, it felt very stifling. It was very confusing. I did so much research, like going to the library, like really wanting to understand American history. Like I remember, this is gonna sound ridiculous now, but I remember wanting to like really go to a family reunion. I was like, I'm sure, and I just decided to buy them tea. Like I would really like ask, I'm like, so why don't we have family in Alabama? Like I want to go down south, like I want to look out to Atlanta, and she's like, we are not like no. Like they just were like so like it was just like a ridiculous request. It's like, what are you talking about? But like I had that longing, and I was like, I want to do that, and when I went to Howard, I had this in retrospect, it was like so ridiculous, but I was trying to like reverse engineer our lineage, and I was trying to see if I could like find, folks that came over here in the slave trade that like may have been connected to my family. It is an impossible task. I mean, things are different now with DNA and things like that, so you can get like some sort of idea, but I was really trying to look through census records at Howard and do all this stuff and write all these, stories, trying to imagine what it was like for my ancestors, or if there was any connection that they came to the States before my parents immigrated. Like, I mean, there's endless possibilities that we just do not know. And one book that helped me at least like kind of soften those ideas or my imagination kind of like ruminating on that was Charis's Homegoing. Yes. Yeah, it's such a beautiful book. Yes, it's a beautiful book, but literally the book imagines like all these African tribes, and like you go from being on the continent to being in the Harlem Renaissance. And that like satisfied something in my soul. It's like, oh, like this is what it could have been. And I'm okay with that. Like the not knowing kind of, started to just like settle itself. And I encourage you to do that, do the research, to ask the questions, read the books that kind of satisfy whatever curiosity or longing that you're hoping for, and continue to make community in that same way. I would encourage you to read the book Blessing. That's a new book that's come out that talks about queer identity and the beauty of that, and what it means, especially when you're on the continent. There's just so many things you can read and people that you can find online and off that will help you just like continue to grow and feel stronger in who you are, and will respect your identity and love you through it. Even if your parents don't immediately understand. I would say also my youngest brother is queer, and at one point my mom wasn't fully understanding, and then she came around, and it took a while. It really did take her a while to understand, and it was like a slow and steady process. And oddly enough, it was because of the Ellen DeGeneres. like it's just sometimes it's like these odd examples that they see in media, or they feel like I don't know, but she came around. So just give offer grace to yourself and those that you love, and keep them close. Like a lot of times people will say sever the relationship, and I think that is an option. But there's also something else in just like being patient and seeing how you guys can grow together.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
I will say, thankfully, my mother has got on board.
Yes, we love that.
It took her a while.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Hello, I'm good. My name is Janelle Simmons, and I had a question. Have you had a chance to give flowers to your author phase or heroes? And if so, any moments that you savor?
Oh, that's a beautiful question. Two people that come immediately to mind. I just mentioned her book, Denene Millner is someone that I absolutely adore. Her writing is just extraordinary. But she also just is like the most generous, warm person. And so she came to my festival this year. She was like closing keynote in conversation with Safiya Sinclair. And like those two Caribbean women together are just like full force magic. And we had the opportunity to ask her what it was like for her to work with Miss Morrison. And she talks about just like the lineage and the giving back and she told this amazing story about at one point Toni Morrison called her to travel to Paris with her, and she had just had her first child, and how Miss Morrison went through like found ways to accommodate her so she could come on the trip. Like, just going out of her way to make it easier, understanding like the process of motherhood. And it was just like a beautiful story. I'm not even doing it justice, but she is someone that constantly shows up for me and calls on me and makes sure that like I'm okay. And it's just a very warm person. So I definitely have given her flowers and sing her praises. And then the sing this one right here too. When her latest book, newest book, novel one that came out, like I just so proud of you. Like you have an incredible empire when it comes to just literature and from children's to writing, working with people, writing memoirs. We've done all the things. We've all the things. You are such an open and generous person and loving. And you show up. You show up for those who love. And it's so beautiful to witness. And I feel like I have a creative model in you. And I also want to call out just like your creative conviction. We have such like conviction in the work that you do. And one that is so exemplary. It just shows all of that. So
Thank you. She's been such a huge champion of my work, of all of our work, but to have her reach out to me and talk to me about my book like she read it and she understood what I was trying to do, and then to put her full weight behind helping me get it out into the world, hosting me, talking to me, speaking life into me when I was like, I'm scared. I don't know, not enough people are reading this. She was there with the flowers, just throwing them constantly at my feet. And so I'm grateful for you.
Hello, I'm extra here. I wanted to shift gears a little bit. I wanted to ask you, with all the work that you do pouring into women and creating space for us to be seen, how do you create time for you to be feeling important to?
oh man, child. Well, I have abandoned the word balance and try my best to be in harmony with everything and try to like really think about ebbs and flows. And I've been trying to like really savor the moment. When I did my first two anthologies, I was just like back to back traveling, doing all these things, and I did not celebrate once. I didn't have a dinner. I didn't do like flowers. I didn't do anything. Like I just was like the second anthology happened during the pandemic, and we just went birth, so that was an insane experience. And then the first one in 2018, it was like really beautiful, but I also just was like overwhelmed by I was just overwhelmed by everything. So I just kind of like retreated and got very quiet. With this though, I had dinners, I'm doing brunches, I'm like, my friends made me some cookies that had my gathering on it. I've been just trying to sit with everything and like receive the accolades and the warmth and the love and just like the kindness that everyone is pouring my way. Because it was such an emotional experience writing this, and it was hard. It just was really, really hard. And when I get overwhelmed, I tend to just like go like quiet. And so even my friends, like, they saw that too. They're like, okay, Glory's getting quiet. Let me like follow up and check on her. And then, I also just been doing a lot of therapy too. So all those things have become very wonderful coping mechanisms. And I feel good. Like I also think I'm getting older too. I feel like very self-assured in this phase, and writing everything down is like it's given me more space to just be creative and think of new things and think about what the possibilities of my future. I'm just like, wow, all these things happen, and
I was still able to like get to this point, you know, that's still able to achieve everything that I have, and I feel very proud of it. So like, what could be like the next decade be? What can, you know, the next like 20 years look like for me if I approach it with ease and abundance and really take care of myself? What, you know, what can I really create? So I'm excited to just sit in the beauty of that reality that like I have space and time and just like the freedom to live a creative life.
And thank you. You're so cute. I'm a perspective.
It's such a pleasure to finally meet you. I just have to I made a few notes to myself because I get carried away. Number one is I discovered you, I think it was in 2000 or just prior to the pandemic.
Okay.
When kind of you were just getting things rolling.
Oh, 2020.
Yeah.
2000, that's my high school.
And I'm showing my age here, but I'm first of all, I'm glad to see that you that these young women are really getting to appreciate literary books from the past. I think the exposure is really good. I think it opens up, you know, like a whole new world to everyone. So that's one of the things that got me through the pandemic.
Yeah.
I followed you a lot on Instagram, and I began to read more. I stopped reading for a while, but I realized that is what brought me joy, and so I was glad to bring that back into my life. And I just so I can relate to going to books to save your life, because it kind of made me evolve and work through what I was going through at the time. I was in DC at that point. I'm no longer here, so I made some changes from that as well. And just love discovering the books that you are exposing to us. I continue to watch you and read new books. So I like that you're championing Black authors too. Yeah, yeah. So no real question. I had a question about the title of your book. How you came to that? How did you come to the title?
So I went through different phases of the title. At one point, I was like, "This book's called Show Me What to Do." I really do use like writing and reading as like guides to like figure out who I am, and it feels like I can see patterns and like distill things when it's on page, or at least like right now. And then I was like thinking of my favorite books, and one of my favorite books is Beloved. I might have shared this before in other spaces, but I love the word beloved. I think it's just like how it sounds in your mouth, like what it means. You know, the course title of Toni Morrison was iconic books. It's a strong word. If I ever had a girl, I would probably be your beloved. And I was thinking about that book, and then of course the quote, "The gather she gathered me in," that iconic quote that is just so beautiful and full of so much life. So I was sitting with that, and then I thought about Auburn Black Girl, like the essence, the ethos of the community is gathering together and being together, whether we're doing the book club or meeting online or having a festival. When we gather, we have so much power. We can sit with one another. And this idea of Black women and sisterhood, being a friend of one's mind, when you are reading something that is touching your heart and making such a difference in how you show up for yourself, it moves your mind, it moves your heart. So all those things kind of came together, and I was like writing things down and talking to my editor about like what it meant to be saved by literature and be saved by the art that you encounter. It just seems so simple. It's like, oh, gathering, like all these things have made a huge difference in my life, and I feel gathered by them and helped. And so, you know, we went through different iterations, and then once we like looked together, I'm like, oh, this is it.
It felt right. It felt right. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.